These are images of a highway full as the population of an entire country flees for safety. They are Christian Armenians and come from a small, de facto independent region of the Caucasus Mountains called the Republic of Artsakh, or Nagorno-Karabakh. The highway is the only road connecting the region to its greatest ally Armenia, which, following Azerbaijan's military offensive and occupation of Nagorno-Karabakh in late September of last year, was the only way to go for its population of over 100,000. So let me tell you the story of why tens of thousands of people had to flee their homeland, and what happens to them now. Hi guys, my name is Lucas, I'm 18, and I'm an international journalism student. I actually had the opportunity to travel to Armenia for a couple of weeks back in April, which is where my curiosity for the story began. Before we start, I just want to talk to you guys real quick. First of all, this is my first time recording any sort of long format video like this, so I'm very awkward behind the camera still. And as I was still in Armenia, I wasn't planning on eventually making a video about this, so I don't have that much footage from my trip. I'm going to try my best though to include whatever I can from my journey, as well as anecdotes from different people that I met along the way. But yes, thank you for your understanding. Now let's get back to this very important story. We start exactly 100 years before ethnic Armenians would flee their homes in Nagorno-Karabakh following Azerbaijan's occupation of the region. It's the year 1923. Armenia and Azerbaijan belong to the same country, the Soviet Union, which unites these 15 republics. Soviet authorities decide to establish the Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast inside the Soviet Socialist Republic of Azerbaijan in order to manage ethnic tensions between Armenians and Azerbaijanis in the region. Nagorno-Karabakh is populated mostly by ethnic Armenians, who practice Christianity rather than Islam, like the Azerbaijani majority regions that surround them. As part of the same empire, Armenians and Azerbaijanis would get along relatively well, with many towns and cities being mixed between people from both backgrounds. However, things start to change as the Soviet Union begins to break apart. During the fall of the Soviet Union, tensions develop into a war that lasts 6 years and results in most of Nagorno-Karabakh, along with some adjacent Azerbaijani territory, falling under Armenian military control. This war leaves over 30,000 people dead and coerces almost all of Nagorno-Karabakh's Azerbaijani minority to flee the region. After the war, Nagorno-Karabakh, which would later officially change its name to the Republic of Artsakh, becomes a de facto independent state within the borders of Azerbaijan that relies heavily on Armenia for economic and military support. It's important to note here that the Republic of Artsakh would never be officially recognized by any UN member state. Rather, it'd be internationally recognized as a breakaway region belonging to Azerbaijan. In the coming decades, some intermittent clashes take place, keeping tensions high. During this time, Azerbaijan realizes tremendous economic growth, supported by its production of oil and gas. Additionally, it strengthens its relations with Turkey, a large political influencer in the region and a sworn enemy of Armenia. Eventually, Armenian and Azerbaijani forces fight a second war in 2020, lasting 6 weeks and claiming the lives of thousands of people. During this war, Azerbaijan regains control of much of the territory it previously lost to Armenia, once again isolating Artsakh. It's now December 2022. Azerbaijan launches a blockade of Artsakh, limiting access to gas, electricity, and internet for Armenians living in the territory. The region is even prevented from receiving humanitarian aid, as Red Cross convoys are banned over alleged smuggling of unsanctioned products. Then, on the 19th of September 2023, following their 9-month-long blockade, Azerbaijani forces attack and overwhelm troops defending Nagorno-Karabakh, entirely seizing control of the region. Ethnic Armenians are advised to flee, and within the following 10 days, over 100,000 people escaped to Armenia. Only a few individuals, most of whom are elderly or disabled, stay behind.
The history of conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan is long and extremely complicated. There's absolutely no way for me to explain it all in this one video. However, I did my best to summarize some of the most notable developments of the past century, providing context into what the situation looks like today, with a strong Azerbaijan on the upper hand in a decades-long conflict that has already taken the lives of thousands, created over 100,000 refugees, and fueled ethnic tensions and generational hatred between Armenians and Azerbaijanis. I'm gonna take another minute to speak to you guys. I'm sorry if I'm turning my head and looking over here for most of the time. I have my notes jotted down on my computer to help me remember what to say. Sorry, I'm not that good at making videos yet. But anyway, this story, or everything that I've talked about so far in the video, helps us understand why and how over 100,000 Artsakhi people ended up seeking political refuge in Armenia after fleeing their homes in Nagorno-Karabakh last September. Nevertheless, it's a lot to take in all at once, and especially for those unfamiliar with Armenian and Azerbaijani and Artsakhi people and cultures, it can be hard to relate to the story, or at least to visualize it. At least this is how it was for me. When I was doing research about my trip before I went, I learned a lot about the conflict, but I still didn't understand really what it meant, or at least it felt very distant to me still. However, this changed as I went to Armenia and I had the opportunity to meet and to hear the accounts of a number of the refugees who had fled Nagorno-Karabakh for safety in Armenia. So, I'm gonna take this next part of the video to tell you the story of one of those refugees, Greta Balayan, who today co-owns a bakery with her sister in a village about an hour's bus ride outside of Armenia's capital city, Yerevan. I hope that by learning her story, you'll be able to better visualize what conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan means for the regular people it affects, like Greta. As she heard the first rockets fly overhead, Greta's initial fear was that there would be a genocide of all Armenian people in Artsakh. She felt trapped and couldn't help but remember the stories she'd been told of Azerbaijani soldiers slaughtering helpless children and elderly people, ransacking Armenian cities, and destroying historical and cultural landmarks important to the Armenian people. Greta was born in 1987 in Stepanakert, the capital of the Republic of Artsakh. At 37 years old, she's experienced war many times before. She was just 5, playing with her neighbors in the backyard one day, when suddenly her city was under attack. Greta does not remember many details of that day, except that a nearby explosion caused a window to shatter, launching fragments of glass in all directions. Today, the scars on her shoulder and back serve as a reminder to her of the sacrifices her people have made to protect their culture, their identity, and their land. Life was difficult for Greta's family during the blockade, but they had hope that the world would help them and that their lives would return to normal. For Greta, Azerbaijan's military offensive in September 2023 came as a complete surprise. The day in the invasion was an ordinary day in Artsakh, she tells me. As people went to work in the morning, the thought that Artsakhi people would need to leave the lands that their ancestors had been living on for generations, if not thousands of years, was far from their minds. On the day of the invasion, Greta's 2 children, one son, one daughter, were attending school. After the first rockets had passed, she and her sisters rushed to pick them up. For days, the women and children of Greta's family took shelter in the school's basement, together with other families. Without any light, electricity, or food, time in the crowded basement went by slowly. As days passed, it became more and more evident that Artsakis would need to leave the country. Eventually, Greta and her family decided to give in and flee for Armenia. She knew she couldn't stay in Artsakh. Greta told me, an Azerbaijan soldier would not hesitate to kill an Armenian. They hate us because we are Christian. It took 2 days for Greta and her family to drive to Armenia. The 75-kilometer route through the mountains, which would usually take about an hour and a half to drive, was completely backed up, with Armenians attempting to leave Artsakh. Greta remembers the days as heavy. Exhausted, hungry, and scared for their future, the family eventually made it to Armenia, where they were hosted by a woman offering free accommodation for refugees. For Greta, the disregard for human life by politicians driven by greed and ambition is something that she cannot reconcile. The more blood they drink, the more they want. They play with people's lives like a game, she proclaimed. Her family would leave everything behind in Artsakh. Besides their homeland with its Artsakhi cultural sites, citizens of the former Republic of Artsakh would leave behind their homes, belongings, and jobs as they left for Armenia. For Greta, this included her job as a government employee, a nearly impossible position to land in Armenia. Thus, together with her sister Anait, who formerly worked as a lawyer in Artsakh, Greta decided to take out a small loan to open a bakery. Neither sister had any prior experience working in baking, but Greta explains that they have to do whatever it takes to survive. Life continues, and we have to live for our children, she tells me. The bakery is located in the Armenian town of Garni. The entire shop is made up of nothing more than a couple of tables, a small oven, and a large display case crammed into a cubic room of about 25 square meters, which the sisters rent out. Here, they prepare traditional treats and bread from Artsakh, an effort to keep their culture alive and maintain a connection to their heritage amidst the displacement. Greta feels welcomed by the Armenian people. People from Armenia and people from Artsakh understand each other well. They are the same people, she says. However, understanding between Armenians and Azeris, she claims, is impossible. It is equal. We hate them and they hate us, Greta remarks. The only way towards peace in her mind would be if the world woke up and helped the Armenian people.
So that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching all the way until the end. I would really appreciate it if you guys could also leave me some feedback or let me know what you thought about the video. This is the first time that I've ever made any sort of long format video or any video about my trip. So I do really appreciate it if you guys could let me know what I can improve on, or maybe what you liked, anything like that. It goes a long way. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I hope that everybody could learn something new today, and I hope that this video could spark at least one person's curiosity about this topic.